So, hello everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Off Air podcast. Of course, it is our annual Maidstone United season preview. We are going to be taking a look at our Maidstone United predictions for the year. Sean there hinting at me needing to introduce the boys, as this is currently our second take of this podcast, where I forgot to introduce them previously. Very poor organisation, I know. However, I am joined today by Sean Skur. Welcome, Sean.
I was trying to find the badge because I'm looking at myself opposite. So, hello,
Oh.
everybody. We're
Well,
all a bit backwards
I've
today.
dropped myself in it unnecessarily
Unnecessarily.
there, but
Hello, everyone.
welcome Sean and Nigel Seeger as well joining us.
Hello.
So, like I said, we are of course doing all things Maidstone in this one today. We are donning our respective Maidstone United kits, all different years, of course, but we will nonetheless be talking about the upcoming season. Anyway, so to kick things off, we're going to be talking about the league campaign itself and where we think Maidstone are going to finish. Now, we're not going to spend too long talking about it, as I think everybody's quite concise on where they think we're going to end up. So I'll go first because that's typically how we do things. And I have gone with a very generous, I think some people may say, third place for Maidstone United next season. I know some people are of the opinion that we're going to win the league. Not many people, but I know a lot of people are a little bit worried, worried that we might not even get playoffs, worried that we might be in what is obviously a transitional season, but we may not do too well in the league from that. Now, my reasons for putting us in third position is I've looked at the core of our team. Obviously, we've lost some important players from last season and the season before that. But if you take a look at the leaders in the team, we've still got Gavin Hoyt. We've still got George Edakobi, obviously now managing the team. We've still got George Fowler, who was our player of the year last season, and of course, captain at points. We've also managed to retain players like Sam Bone and Reece Greenwich, who of course are leaders in their own right. Sam Corn, another pivotal player in a very important role in the team. And we've also brought a lot of new blood into the side as well. And I think the relationship between these players is something which has already begun to develop. We have already seen that a lot of players are very close to each other, laughing, joking around, spending time together outside of training sessions and games and things like that. And I think we do have quite a solid unit. And we've made some very, very good additions to that outside of that core group. We've made some very impressive signings, in my opinion. I really like the look of players like Cheetahs and Nolim, DeGraft, obviously a few others in there as well. Amanchi, Reynolds, Connor Kelly, of course, being one of the latest additions to the side as well. And I just like how this squad is starting to come together. I have got one condition, however, for us finishing third, which is if we can sign a top three goalkeeper. Obviously, we're starting this season as it stands with Harley Earl as our only contracted goalkeeper. And it's not that I don't have faith in Harley, but it's a lot of pressure to put on someone very young, has not had very much experience at all anywhere near this level in the past. Obviously, playing for, I think it was Sitting Ball last year. Is that right, lads?
Yeah, he was on loan at Sycamore, wasn't he?
Yeah, so had a good loan stint there, but obviously if you look at the gap between this level and that level, there's a big leap there. So I don't want to put him in that position, and I think that it could cause us a few problems down the line if he was in there quite consistently throughout the year. But I think looking at the other teams in the league as well, obviously there's a few teams who are also going through a transition. Yeovil have just got that new ownership, have they not, or investment, something
Yeah.
along those lines. And I think in terms of Torquay, I think those two will be our two main rivals, obviously coming down from the National League. But I think Torquay have done what we've done. They've retained their core group. They've retained some very important players for their side, and they strengthened as well. They've just retained a few more than what we have, and that is my reason for putting them up there. Yeovil, I think, have just got some really good quality players in, obviously transition as well, but yeah, I think they're doing pretty good for themselves. I look at the rest of the teams, and there's a lot of teams last season who finished in the playoffs that had good years, the likes of Worthing, Chelmsford, obviously teams who have not consistently been at that level, and you cannot guarantee that they're going to have another season like that. I think both sides have strengthened, but you never know, you might get a second season syndrome type thing from those sides after a good year. So that is going to be my reason for putting us in third place. So, Sean, what about yourself? Where have you got Maidstone United in this 23-24 season?
Well, I've got them finishing in the top 24. You'll be pleased to hear.
Oh, happy days.
I
Better than last season, isn't it?
pretty much, yeah. No, I've got Maidstone slightly different from yourself. I've got them in fourth place, just missing out on the automatic semi-final berths. I think you've touched most things there, to be honest, Joe, as you usually do. That's all, folks. It's an experienced back line that they've got. Some exciting new young forwards. I know last season, I think at one point in the last month of the season, we had pretty much the youngest average squad age. And looking at who we've recruited, I think we're probably even younger than we were back then, to be fair. So a lot of inexperience in the final two-thirds, very experienced at the back. For me, it's also the lack of a recognised number one. I will say the one thing I absolutely love about Harley-El is his long, hard balls. His distribution is exceptional. What I've seen, that's you, that is, Joe. That was
Sorry.
and he's got a mouthful. It's disgusting.
Oh no, long hard balls and a mouthful. What a shame.
Indeed. But yeah, his distribution is second to none in the division from what I've seen, from the research I've done. So I wouldn't have any qualms with him being our number one at the start of the season. I'm sure we'll be looking for someone. Certainly been lots of talk about hundreds of names that we've been linked with and been looking at, and eventually I'm sure we will find someone to fill that number one slot, mainly for competition for Harley as well. I think that is another key thing to mention, is that if he will be in and around the first team, as a reserve keeper at least, then he needs competition, because he'll only get worse without the competition, in my opinion. So yeah, relatively young squad up front, very experienced at the back. Goalkeeper's a toss-up whether it's experience or youth come Saturday. But fourth place for me, I just think there's some stronger teams squad-wise. When we go and do the other podcast for the division as a whole, there'll be some other teams, I believe, that have got a lot more recruitment and a lot bigger squad. Certainly looking around the club websites, I'm not too worried for Maidstone's prospects, purely because most teams have got anywhere between 15 and 18 players on their websites as well. So I think everybody's in a similar position, rowing against the tide, essentially, and waiting for those players to come downstream to put them in their raft and try and get back up the metaphorical water raft ladder that I've somehow made. But you get what I mean. It's waiting for those people to come aboard later on, once others, that trickle down effect that we always mention in terms of the transfer window. So for me, fourth place for Maidstone, and sod it, we'll win the playoffs as well. We'll put the asterisk next to the 4, shall we? Go for it.
You know what? I'll try that on there as well, just for Maystone's sake. But yeah, I think you base really good points. We obviously share a very similar opinion in that obviously we need, if anything, that competition for that goalkeeping spot rather than someone who's coming in as that top class player. At least having someone who is good enough to start, but also rivaling the competition is a very important thing. You don't want to have complacency any position in the squad. Nigel, you're up next. Where have you got Mesa? I know last season you were very optimistic about our prospects for this season. How are you feeling now?
Yeah, I am optimistic, and pretty much like you guys, I've gone for fourth place. Just as as bad as last season was, you've got to remember that it was only 2 seasons ago that we were the champions, and we have kept the core of that squad. And also we've come down with players like Solwan Joe Smith, who, don't forget, he was injured for the start of last season, but in his previous National League South campaign, I think he had something like 17 goal contributions.
I think it was more than that. I think that was just the assists.
Just the assists, yeah. So, that's, I know he had, at that time, he had Ryan Seager at Hungerford sort of on the end of those crosses, a majority of them at least. but people are saying that we haven't got a recognised striker. But you look at teams that are generally up there, and which made the point about Hungerford. That season last season they were sort of mid-table team, and Seagulls up there banging the goals in near the top of the division. But you only really need a couple of players contributing 10 plus goals, and that makes up your 20 goal season, don't you? And I think in those sort of like Amanci and Obi, we've got those sort of players that can, they're both different players. That's what I like about them. They're both different, the size as well. But, I think Amanci is going to be the one that's going to sort of accumulate the goals. You might get a goal here, a goal there. Whereas Obi will sort of like maybe bang a hat trick in and get, his goals that way and have like a purple patch. But, still come the end of the season, they're going to be there or thereabouts if they get the same sort of game time. So that's a positive for me. And like you say, we've got some good players there, and in De Graft and Enzanolium, and I think once you get them sort of crowd favourites again, and get that feel good factor back, you'll win more games than you'll lose at home. So I think that's going to be an important factor as well. We are going to have a big crowd, as are Torquay and Yeovil, but it's important that we use that to our advantage, because if it's going against you and you've got a big crowd, and it can be like a library sometimes, can't it? So it's I just think the signs are there. I've no doubt that we will get a goalkeeper in. I know they are looking, and like Sean says, we've been linked with every keeper that's free from the southeast of England, I think. But but again, it's you're looking at the players that we've got in. We haven't, like a Manchi, and we've gone out of that Kent circle, that Kent southeast circle, and we've passed on that wider. So that gives me hope that and George said in his interview, I think it was towards the end of maybe the Folkestone game last week, that the budget's there. It's not a case of we haven't got the budget for it. We're not scraping the bottom of the barrel and just trying to get any old player. It's got to be the right player. So I've no doubt that we will. And if we get a good start and get that monkey off our back of George not winning a league game, I'm sure we'll be okay.
Yeah, I think that is going to be key, isn't it? I know off air, despite this being the off air podcast, we have spoken about the fact that start of the season is so important. Obviously, we've got 6 games in August. And if out of those 6 games, we're losing half of them, maybe drawing 1 or 2 and only get a win or 2 in there, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because you're already going to see that gap starting to form between, the likes of Torquay and Yeovil. I've got no doubt will probably pick up 10 plus points quite easily in August.
I think, Joe, I think it's that that's what switching that Yeovil game, thinking about it, could be to our advantage. I mean, they're going to be at home, so the pressure's going to be on them. And you said as well that they're up there, that they're going to be expected to, they've got new ownership. Their home crowd's going to be turning up expecting to get something. So if we can get a draw like we did last season, don't forget they didn't beat us last year. We got 2 draws in both the fixtures, didn't we? So, and that we're not, unlike some of the teams that in the national stuff, that's going to be their cup final. So I think that will sort of be to our advantage as well, because we're the same as them teams. We're not going to be afraid of those teams. It's not going to be any bigger game than we've had last season, is it? So I think we can sort of go under the radar to those teams and pick up our fair share of points.
Mm-hmm.
Also, to make another point on the back of the Yeovil rearrangement, it means 4 away games in a row, of course, in August. It therefore means 4 home games in a row, January, February time. And that's really getting into that final third of the season. If Maidstone are there or thereabouts, and you're thinking you've got possibly 2 or 3 challenges to play in that run-in, and, the 2 times Maidstone have been promoted, they were out of it in the division with Sutton and Ebbsfleet, and they were out of it with Dorking as well. And both times recovered to get promoted either via the playoffs or automatically, as we did 2 years ago. So, yeah, I think with the rearrangement of the fixtures and the momentum we've got, August is still fairly crucial. I'd hope for only 1 defeat at most out of that particular month, but which I know is a hard ask for some of the places we've got to go, and just the fact we've got to go to those places. But if we can get anywhere near the home form we had 2 years ago, then yeah, I think our third/fourth predictions. I'm assuming Connor's gone fairly similar to that as well, has he?
He didn't actually get round to sending them to me, to my knowledge. Unless I've missed them, I can't see them, but I'll talk to him and see if I can just chuck him in the edit somewhere on the screen. So, yeah, I know he's obviously a little bit more optimistic than general fan base. He kind of goes along the same line as a lot of us, I think. So, I assume he'll have us in and around the conversation. But yeah. So I'll have a little chat, Connor. But what we was talking about just there in terms of those important points in the season, if you look at last year, that Christmas, January, February time, just how poor that was. And I'm gonna not only relate that to, the feeling on the pitch and in the ground, but even fans' interaction with the club as a whole. I mean, this is just from a very niche viewpoint. If you look at our podcast views from the start of the season up to about October, November time, we was doing really well. And then you get to this like November to like March, and it is shocking. No one wants to know anything about the club. No one wants to know what's going on in games. Nobody cares. We're not winning. We're not drawing. And the feel good factor was just in disarray, wasn't it? It was awful. So, yeah, I think that being able to pick up points in that period of the season is such a turning point for teams. And if we do retain that home form, which, by the way, we haven't actually lost at home in the pre-season. We've had a few games there and some tough games as well, to be fair, considering how many trialists and things we played. And we haven't lost yet. So
clean sheets at home as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're doing really well at home.
That's how we got up under Jay as well, because we were so dull at the back. Nothing happened there all season long. And that was, to Jay's credit, getting that back line as organised as it was. And hopefully, George himself, as a former defender, we've seen so far in pre-season.
Yes.
And Slough, I must admit, no offence to Slough, because obviously they had a really bad season last season. But if you could have picked a first game at home to open your season, having not won in 25 league games, a side that barely stayed up with a week left of the season,
and have just lost a lot of their best players as well, to be fair.
Exactly, who got them to 20th, 19th last season, then I think a few hands would have been bitten off for the fixture computer to give us that one, frankly.
Yeah, 100%. Nigel, was there anything else you were looking to add to Maidstone's league prediction for next season?
I think we've pretty much covered everything there. I mean, it's certainly more reasons to be optimistic than there was last season, I think.
I think so too. Yeah, I definitely think so too. So now we've spoken about Maidstone's overall position, we're going to look into the finer details, and we're going to go with our top scorer for the season first of all. So for me, I think that our top scorer this season, and I've put how many goals I think he'll score as well. I don't know if this is a thing I mentioned that we could do, if you just chuck a number out there if you haven't done it. But on the fly planning, you love this. That's why people watch. But I've gone with Levi Manchi. I think that being the focal point of a team is going to pick you up goals, whether you're a clinical striker or not. I think we're going to see him quite a bit this season. As Nigel said earlier on, I do think we're going to see a bit of a blend between himself and Ogo Obi as well. But I think Amanchi may be the more consistent of the two. I think over the course of a season, 46 games, I believe he's going to pick up 23 goals. That is going to be my prediction. I'm going to go a goal every other game. It's quite high. I've actually got 19 written down, but I thought about it and I thought, you know what? If he does get that consistency...
Inflation for you.
Exactly, I know. It's going up at the moment. We've just hit 25% there, but I reckon if he just gets consistent game time, he is going to score. If you haven't watched the All You Need to Know videos on the channel, go and check them out because they are very interesting deep dives. Obviously, I'm going to say that is my content, but even if you look at it from an outside perspective, on the face of things, a lot of the players that we're bringing in may not stand out. But once you look deeper and analyse the sort of players that we're bringing in, and this was the key thing that they mentioned at the supporters' evening as to why we're bringing these players in, we're taking a deep dive. We're bringing in people that we believe have the ability to have a significant level of output. And I don't think we would have bought Amanci in if we didn't think he could score 20 goals a season. And I think we're going to do everything we can to make him do that. So I don't really think he's got a choice. So I'm going to go with Amanci, and I'm going to go with 20 plus, I think is my prediction. 23 maybe, but 20 or 20 plus is going to be my final prediction. So, Sean, what about you?
I think you might be reading my mind there, sir, because again, we've seen it all pre-season, and I mean, 5 minutes in, Amanci misses a sitter, and everybody thinks, "Oh shit, here we go again."
Another one, a dud. Yeah.
Exactly. But since then, certainly in all the home games at least that I've been able to get to and see, that he has been the focal point. He has led the line at various points. He's had great interplay with pretty much everybody, be it Samuel, Raz, Obi, Lamar. You know, you've got 5 forward-thinking players there who really just like to run at people and scare the living bejesus out of them. And again, you've seen it with so much of the play, just down the wings, bomb it down there. Levi's in the middle. It might be Andy Cole. He might need 5 chances to put one away. But if we're going to create 10 chances for him each game,
That's
he's
my
got
thought.
2. You know, exactly. It's just that's just the way he
Yeah.
is. He reminds me of that. The way some of his movement, quite languid at times, sort of a mix of Amiobi and, you know, Shola Amiobi and Andy Cole for me, just being able to get around people without them sort of realising sometimes. I just do like the look of him. And again, you're quite right, Joe, in saying that the club, you know, George and everybody else there have deep dived on these players, picked them because they play in a certain way, and it's not necessarily getting the best player for that position, but it's getting that best player for that style of playing system that Maidstone have. And certainly the last 2 home games, yes, the opposition hasn't been great, but there was a click, there was a moment where you just thought this lot might know what they're actually doing and what they're meant to be doing. So not everybody's happy that it's only trialists that seem to have signed. But again, at the same time, I've probably mentioned this before, that they buy into the mentality of what the squad and the club are trying to do. And if you end up signing a couple more of these trialists that have been around the heart of the squad for the last 5, 6, 7 weeks, they know what's expected of them. And that ain't going to change come Saturday, 3 o'clock at the Gallagher against Slough. They're going to be expected to play the same way. Maidstone are going to bomb down the flanks. They might have 2 centre-backs. They might have 3. Sambo might come back in the middle of the 2 centre-backs to make 3, to make 5, to make the 2, to push on the other 2. And everybody through the middle just bomb on. Because that's what Maidstone want at home. Because that Genko can suck a ball in from bloody anywhere if the mood is right. And, you know,
pal.
exactly.
Don't.
Stop it. Oh, I know. Still get county-wide recognition for it. It's madness, but I love it. I love the moment. I love
Gallagher Stadium-wide recognition.
Well, exactly. Yeah. It's county town recognition that's most important. But exactly that, Nigel. It's moments like that that you're wondering, you know, because we're a bigger fish in a smaller pond. You're thinking, where is that moment this season? When's that coming? And someone like Amanci is one you'd probably expect. It's probably going to then end up being someone like, I don't know, a Bivish or a Perry or one of the other midfielders that's come in this season that you've not heard too much held in. He's just going to come and get that moment. But yeah, certainly at home, I'm fairly confident for Maidstone this season and the way they play. Be interesting to see how that's dealt with away from home. But again, we might get a stonking great result against Slough and we might think, let's crack on. I'm sure Bath will be doable and we go on from there. So yeah, hopefully Amanci will get a large number of goals. We already know there's other top strikers in the division who probably outscore him because that's just what Sean Jeffers just always does, wherever he's playing, whoever he's playing.
You're saying that about Sean Jeffers, though, but Amanci is very much of a similar stature, isn't he? You know, and if you can get the team
gets
playing
about, doesn't he?
Yeah, if you can get the team playing around him.
Yeah, that's the thing. So maybe we've got our own Sean Jeffers, another Jeffers fox in the box, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I think Sean Jeffers scored 28 goals last season, if I can remember correctly. I'm sure Sean will correct me in a second,
I
but
read, I think I read 21 earlier, to be fair, but
oh
then
really?
I've got that from. I think he was second as well, according to the website I
Yeah,
checked.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I might put myself. I might do it as Altsman here
Hang
and
on, let me have a look.
just consult the
It was
stats.
28.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, that's a crap website I use. Then I ain't using that again. Other crap websites are available.
Indeed. I think that's including the playoff games as well. But maybe that's the difference. I don't know. 7 goals in playoffs, maybe not. But yeah, so I think Amanchi's going to do really well. Sean, have you got a number of goals you think he might be able to accrue?
27. Let's go nuts. There you go.
Car, bloody hell,
I mean that means that no one else is getting above double figures when you put it like that.
True.
So I'm probably going to change that and go 17, and then there'll be a couple of others that hit 10, 12, 13.
Yeah,
So
I do think that is more likely, but I've got the faith. And thing is, as well, I know you guys know about this, but for people watching, and my dad, when he'll probably be watching this later, he we had a bet about how many goals Levi Manchi was going to score after watching his first warm up at home against Sheppey. And my dad said he's finished every goal in the top corner. He's going to get 30 goals this season. I bet you a tenner. So if you could score 29, Levi, that'd be brilliant, mate. Or I'd be more than happy to pay the tenner if you bag 30. So Nigel, let's have a little chat about your top scorer from Maidstone this season.
Well, I generally did have Levi Menchie, so it's not very much.
We do this
Yeah,
all the
well,
time.
but it you know, obviously if we're going to go for the goal, that can be the tiebreaker, can't it? So,
Yeah.
but I just some of the reasons why I just think you can just see the way we're set up, and as good as Burham was for us, we did miss that height,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's one of the reasons they've sort of addressed that. Yeah, I mean, we've got Obi in that can be that sort of like Jack Barham sort of player that can nip in and around, get that pace, play the high line, and but so many times last year we didn't have anybody in the middle when them crosses came in the box, and I think that's what Amenchi will provide. And just going on pre-season, I mean, I said it just now, Banjo Smith, 17 assists. If you've got somebody on the end of those crosses, that's all you want, really, isn't it? And Gavin, if we had a player of pre-season, I think he would be it. He's back to his old self he was 2 years ago. That solid 7, 8 out of 10 every week. Getting down them wings, getting the crosses in. Add to that DeGraft and Emden Knowledge, who haven't really seen yet, but he comes with a reputation of liking to get on forward and quite fit and putting the crosses in. And of course, we've seen in the last few games Connor Kelly as well. I mean, that free kick he put in against Dover, you only want, sorry, Dover, Folkestone,
yeah.
down that way,
Another seaside
but
town.
yeah,
he's predicting the future there, guys. He's predicting the future.
well, yeah, but it was that was quality. They wouldn't let that ball in there. You only need somebody to get on the end of that, and like you say, if you're getting 4 or 5 of those, and you get on the end of a couple, you're going to get your tally up, aren't you? I think he's got all the attributes to be coached. I think he's a raw talent. I mean, I mentioned it off air to you guys. The Leatherhead game, he was kind of making those runs. The ball was coming over, and he was making the run where Gavin was going to put the cross in. And you can coach that. You can coach where you've got to make that run. If you know that ball's coming in, consistently, where to be going, making that run and getting in front of his defender. Exactly. It's and I just think and whether he's starting games or he's coming off the bench, in the second half and against tired defenders, he's going to give the defenders in this league something to think about, and that's all you can ask. And so, but I will be more conservative in my estimate. I think I'm going to go for 14 goals. There you go.
Okay.
I think we've got enough players around them that's going to make up that, tally. And
a bit of a Man City before Haaland type system.
Yeah.
A kind of double digits for 4 or 5 players, I think is certainly something we could be looking at.
Are you looking at changing your 23 then, Joe, are you?
Absolutely not. No, definitely not. Double it. We go a goal a game. But yeah, right. I think so I thought I'd bang my head when I sat down earlier, but so
and go again.
That's another point that I made it in our previous podcast as well. people say that he had a few clubs and he hasn't really done anything and that stats wise. But I made the point about Macaulay Langstaff, didn't I? Before his season at Gateshead in the National North, when he banged the goals in that got the attention of Notts County, he was just sort of going between clubs, Blythe Spartans, a couple of spells, and York City. He's not really setting the world alight, but with good coaching and playing in a correct system, and a manager that wants you. We've actually gone out and got a manager. We've actually scouted him. We've identified what he brings to the team, and we've got him in based on what we think he can deliver. That's going to give him so much confidence. And if he can get George and the coaching team behind him, Craig Fagan again, who's played at such a high level, it can only benefit him in the long run, can't it?
Yeah, I think so too. I think age is going to be a key factor in Levi Manchi's season coming up. Like you say, Nigel, still very coachable, still got a lot of time to learn, and already looking like quite a bright prospect. So I think it says a lot when all three of us have gone with the same player, with varying levels of success this season, but all think he'll be the top scorer. Just for anyone who's new as well, we don't confer on any of the predictions that we make before the podcast, so it is a surprise to us when we find out. It's very hush. It's when we find out who says what. Go back last season, you'll see it loads of times happen, and it does end up quite funny. So
all reactions in this video are real.
Exactly, everything's authentic.
Right.
So we're now going to go on to Maidstone's Player of the Year. Of course, last season that was George Fowler. I'm hoping George Fowler won't have as much work to do this season, because I think Reece Greenwich is going to be the standout player for us this season. I think he is going to be our Player of the Year. As we've mentioned already in this podcast, I think Maidstone are going to be very, very tight at the back this year. I think a lot of people have had their concerns about where our goals might come from, and at times I did think that as well, but I was never really that worried because of the defence we've got. I think Reece Greenwich in pre-season has not had a performance with any concern in it at all. I think he's had a 9 out of 10 pre-season. The only way he could have got more was for a couple of goals or something like that from some set pieces. But for me, I think he is just a Rolls Royce at this division. I don't know how we've managed to retain him. I think on the kind of flip side of looking at the negativity of his injuries last season, look at the positive side. That's probably the only reason we've got him this year. And I think whether he was fit or not, we probably still would have gone down last year just because of how much of a mess we were. But I don't think we'd be anywhere near as well off this year without him. So Reece Greenwich is going to be my Player of the Year. Sean, what about yourself? Are you going to agree by any chance or switch it up?
I shall switch it up. I do like the Greenwich shout because of the Fowler link from last year. Of course, he got that. I myself did say that last year the goalkeeper, whoever that may be for Maidstone, would be the Player of the Year. And at certain times, there were certain performances that kept Maidstone in games. Obviously, Sanford was one. I think he had 60% of the league clean sheets for us last season, and he only played about 6.5 games.
Yeah.
So out of the other 39.5 others played. So make of that little nugget what you will. I'm looking further forward, but not too far forward, if that's enough Fs for everyone. I'm going to put my eggs in the Yankee basket and go with our good friend Connor Kelly, because I just, I'm going to say what Nigel said about him before, and I'll plead with him to repeat it as well. He does seem like a player who is better than the National League South level. And I know, Nigel, you're going to say that because you've said it before off air, but just honestly, that before, and I texted you all on Saturday as well, because I was the only one out of the
Sean
four
was the only one there against Lewis,
which is quite a rare occurrence, but run with it. But he was the Kira Walsh of that side in the first half.
Means nothing to
really,
me.
It was it. How dare you? Very, very sexist. He pulled all the strings. He ran
just
the show.
Uncultured.
Half, pretty much. He ran the show in that first half, and everything he touched, he was in the build-up for the first 3 goals, essentially. Not necessarily the direct assist. I know with MLS, in the US.
They do actually score assist to sisters, don't they? Yeah.
They have 3 assists, and it's wonderful when you're watching the highlights back and seeing that it was A to B, who then made C score, and you actually build up a slight bit more of a bigger, better picture of these things. And I just think, like I've said about Regan Booty before, I feel he's going to have the quarterback role, and he's not necessarily going to be the deepest one, but his ball playing skills might allow him to receive the ball either side of the holding midfielder, whoever we've got in there, and he's just going to absolutely ping stuff all over the pitch and create so much. I'd like to see some dead ball stuff from him as well, not just for crossing, but for free kicks as well, because I'm sure I went through some stats, and I'm sure if I can ping them up in time, that the last direct free kick we scored was October 2019
in a competitive game.
Because we had Luque's free kick against Sheppey in a pre-season game before the South season 2 years ago. That was it. So seeing people like him get on the ball as often as possible, be it dead ball, be it open play, just carving defenses open. And it was the other comment from his interview as well, him just saying, I like the competitiveness of relegation and promotion. And yes, he's a British boy, he's a Cockney through and through, and you can't tell from the accent, but these things. And my wife's been over here 10 years, she's American, and she still sounds like she's, redneck, whatever.
She does.
She does. And that's what happens. But honestly, I just think, he's got so much potential, and the fact that he's, wanting to take a chance rather than just staying over in Old Town Road and just staying over there and just playing at a similar level, not doing much, not competing, not growing. For his age, sort of early mid-20s now, you're going, there's someone who's got a lot of ball playing experience, and I think for us to get him, I'd love to know what other scouts were looking at him, if any, and signing someone like him does give you a bit of faith in the scouting system that we've got at the club. Money's in the post sack. For getting players like him in without seemingly much competition, because he was with us most of the second half of pre-season from memory. Probably
and no doubt hidden somewhere behind the scenes. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So he would be my CK, Mr. Connor Kelly, not to be confused with Chloe Kelly, or indeed all the CKs, Calvin Klein. But yes, I'm hopeful for Mr. Kelly this season. He could do quite a bit for us, and probably the caveat we had with Barham at the start of last season: as long as you keep him the whole season, then he'll be great.
Yeah, I think so too. Going back to Kira Walsh quickly, I want to apologise. Usually when Sean references someone, he's on about a singer that I have no idea about. So I was thinking about singers, but I forgot. It's the Lioness player, of course. He unfortunately got another injury, but I know nothing about singers. I think that's a really good shout. I think we have struck quite lucky in the fact that he's never played in England. No one else knows how his ability from America is going to translate to English football. We don't know if he's a League Two quality player. He could well be, but obviously we're the team that's taken the punt on him, and we could very, very greatly benefit from that. I think he's certainly going to be in the conversation for Player of the Year. I know we've not seen too much of him, but looking at his past, looking at where he wants to go with his career, I think it's just got all of the hallmarks to be a very, very successful player at this division and higher. So excellent shout there from Sean. Nigel, I've got a funny feeling you might agree, but hit us with it.
I do, really. I was toying really whether to put him in the surprise package category as well, because we know, obviously you explained on your trialist video, he was the hardest one to find anything about. I know we sort of had an inkling who it was for this guy that you knew or something, but actually get any footage on him to get any stats together was very difficult. So imagine what opposition teams will be like. They're not going to have that footage of him. So again, that's what we were saying about the start of the season. He's going to surprise a lot of teams. I just think he's got all the attributes, isn't he? Really, he's and like you say, we don't know. We don't know how good he is. At the moment, from what we've seen, he does look that definitely one level above where we are, and possibly two. You know, Sean said about that first half against Lewis. Looking at the highlights, I know I wasn't there. He had that effort that hit the crossbar, and it wasn't just it was like an exit missile, wasn't it? You get a few of them in the back of the net, and he's going to get his fair contribution goes. But what I liked about him is he's not afraid. He's not. He plays with that fear. Whether that's because he's new to his country and he's trying to prove himself, I don't know, but he's trying stuff. And if it doesn't come off, he's the first one running back and trying to retrieve the play and go again. And hopefully that continues. Like you said, it does come with a caveat again of whether we can keep him for the whole season. But again, kudos to the recruitment team, because we said it before, haven't we? We've said it before. We get a lot of trialists in. You don't know about these players, and it is a model we're trying to sort of implement into the club. And you only need one of those trialists to come off and go into the football league, and all of a sudden your whole scouting team is elevated to the next level. We missed out a little bit with Seydou Khan with the pandemic. He was that actual trialist that's gone on to the next level, and again, but we didn't really get anything for him because he sort of ran his contract down through the pandemic, as I say. But if we can get him on a good contract, and if he does move on, and get something for him to then reinvest that back into the squad again, that's the model we need to be looking at. So all the time he's with us, I think it's only going to benefit us and the team. So that's why I've sort of really gone for him for being player of the season. So,
well, I think nobody's really going to be able to come up with a good argument as to why the two players that have been mentioned there won't be in the conversation. And I think obviously Nigel's there referencing the surprise package. I think that is going to be the last thing we go on to. For me, it's been a bit of a toss up. I can't quite decide between two people. My first choice is Ogo Obi, because I'm thinking he's, as Nigel mentioned, someone who may not play as consistently as others, but he's got that potential, like Nigel said earlier, to just go out and score a couple goals in a game. He did it a couple times off the bench last season. If we're struggling in a game, the system we're playing with a big man up front's not quite working. Bringing on someone as dynamic and interchangeable as Ogo Obi in a front line is going to completely change the dynamic of your team. And I think we could really benefit from that. So I think he could certainly be in there. And then the second player is going to be Lamar Reynolds. A lot of people have looked at Lamar from last season. They've seen that he only got 6 goals. Might add 6 assists as well in the league last year. So not bad at all for a Braintree side, which he didn't feature too much in. But I think he's looked bright, but it's just not quite clicked just until we got to the last couple of games of pre-season. And now we started scoring. And I'm not sure if he's going to stop, because I think once players like that hit their stride and they find their feet in a team, they can really, really contribute heavily. And he is another player who, like we saw with Christy Patterson, Chrissy's big problem with us was, he's a very good, effective player. What he did, getting past players, getting balls into the box, but it was that end quality, trying to find that last man, trying to put the ball in the back of the net. And I think if Lamar can do that, I think he's going to be a top player for us this season. So they're my two players. I can't quite decide between the two. If we get through you guys, I'll come back once you've made yours.
No sitting on the fence on this podcast.
I'm going to go with Obi. I'm going to go with Obi just because I think he could be more of a surprise. I think Lamar's going to feature a little more regularly. I think Obi might force himself into the team just through sheer force in goals. I think he will score for us this season. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Ogo Obi. But like I say, very close to us up between the two. Sean, hit us with it.
Great shout with Obi, by the way, 'cause it's 42 goal contributions for Hanwell Town in there.
I'd see that after I did the All You Need to Know video, and he scored 35 goals in a season.
Nuts, nuts.
Incredible.
I'm hoping that Nigel and I break our psychic bond, although I suppose it's not the end of the world if we've got one heading into Saturday's commentary. Stones Live, 2:40, Gallagher Stadium, as ever.
Stones Live.
Stones Live in action. My surprise package, purely because of the level he has risen from, rather than how he's played in pre-season. Oh God, Nigel, honestly, get out of my trash can, man. I'm going with DeGraft. Because I'm worried he's in there. He is. Again, like I say, because of the league he's come from with Lewis, you could see how much of a better side Lewis could have been at the weekend with someone like DeGraft in there.
Mm-hmm.
Just the pace, running up players, getting balls across the box, just wanting to run and run and run. And that's, what he's done these last few games this pre-season. And I know he was one of the very early ones outside of the core squad from last season that they were so keen to sign, because he's been signed for, about 2.5 months now, about 10 weeks probably from memory. And he's just, yes, he is someone that I would be surprised if he's not looking at, double figures for goals and assists this season for Maidstone. I'm really hopeful of him. But again, purely surprise because of, the leap he's having to make. That's why I'm putting him there. And I'm intrigued to see if Nigel has followed me down the same path for the 4th time this evening.
Just to interject quickly, Nigel, it was 14 goals and 12 assists that Razak got last season for Lewis, and 26 goal contributions for a winger in a team that, bear in mind, wasn't the best team in the league for Lewis. They were a good team, they were up there, but they weren't the best. So certainly a good shout. Nigel, apologies.
Yeah. I was going to go with DeGraft, just purely because what Sean said, from the level that he's come from, it is that little bit of an unknown quality with a bit of sort of education behind it, because it's certainly something that they've identified from the end of last season. That they were going out looking at games, so I wouldn't be surprised if they've been looking at him since sort of February onwards time, and since we knew we'd been relegated. But I will go with another player that, again, has played at this level before, but it's certainly one that we know they've identified to get in. It's one that George was very keen to get in at the end of the season, and we haven't really seen him in pre-season. So that's why I sort of that surprise element. We don't know what he's going to bring. We know what we want him to bring to the table, and that's Nigel and I. To me, he very much seems like somebody in the Jerome Binnon Williams camp that, with those twinkle feet, liquid football again, Joseph, getting in there, likes to play up on the edge of the opposition penalty area, but is equally as adept playing at the back, and covering. And I think his age is on his side. He's not really lived up to his potential yet. I don't think. I know he had his troubles last year at Welling, and as a lot of them did there, and they probably had a much better team than what their position, sort of their final league position, showed in the table. But I think if he can do half of what Jerome did and that little bit more, I think he's going to surprise a few teams in this league and become a real crowd favourite. So that's why I've gone for Enz and Olim.
I think that's a great shout, Nigel. I was debating whether to put him as the surprise package, but I just thought, because I know how good he was last year, I was of I think a similar opinion to yourself when it comes to DeGraft. I think you said it wouldn't be much of a surprise if DeGraft did really well because of how good he was for Lewis. I think we had that conversation off air. But yeah, I think that Chi is going to be a great player for us. I think, you know, the competition in that left back role is very high as well. You know, there's a lot of stakes on a starting position in this Maidstone team for that left back position.
I think as well. I think as well. Just sorry, interrupting you there, Joseph. I think that's the modern way of football. You're
Yeah,
not. You don't really play your flat back fours anymore. You know, you haven't
yeah,
got your traditional left back and right back. It's more left wing and right wing, and that they are wanting their players to be more up the field and pushing on and getting crosses in the box. And I think he's gonna, just because we don't know him. I mean, probably opposition managers will be aware of him because they would have played against him last year. But I think hopefully being in that better team and that more structured environment. I mean, Ellen were part time last year, so he's sort of gone back to that semi-pro sort of full-time model. So hopefully he can really kick on this year and surprise a lot of people.
yeah. I think very good shouts there from everybody, for sure. Now, that is all we've got in terms of our predictions for the season. And this is going to be where we wrap things up. There is going to be, after this podcast comes out, a National League podcast as well, which we are going to get into recording very shortly. But we're going to be taking a look at the entire league in that one. You know, the top 7 playoffs, who we think is going to do well, who we think is not going to do so well in terms of relegation. And we're going to go with the same as well in terms of scorers, player of the year, things like that. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for that one. If you made it this far, then please do subscribe to the channel. Still pushing close to 200. And I'm sure the boys here would very much enjoy those numbers going up as well. Cheers, Sean. So this is where we're going to end things. Now, thank you so much if you made it this far in the podcast. We really appreciate you staying with us, and we'll catch you all in the next one.